are listening to the Up and Under podcast, starting in 3, 2, 1.
Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome into the Up and Under podcast. I'm your host, Hani. Joined with me, as always, is Zishan.
Yo. And
a special edition of the podcast. This is our first episode that we are doing live on video.
Yeah, bro. You guys have heard us on audio on our podcast and whatnot for the last while. Finally transitioned into the physical realm, man. We're trying to get our we're trying to get our Joe Rogan on, you know.
Yeah, but
100 mil Spotify deal.
Oh, that's coming. That's coming. Hopefully in the near future. But at this point in time, we felt that it was a good opportunity to transition to video. First of all, for you guys to see us in a different light rather than just hearing our voices, you can kind of see our reactions. But also, it's a little bit more interactive. You can get to know us on a different level, and we can interact with you on a whole different platform, which is YouTube, which you'll be seeing these episodes whenever we post them. So
yeah, like it makes a lot more sense to, put both sides out, the audio and the video. And for whoever is listening on audio too, you guys can still listen to audio.
Same show. We're not like the format and the gist of the show is not going to change. All it is that now, hey, you can see our faces. So this is going to be our first shot of video. We have been doing some trial runs over the last few weeks or so, but this is going to be officially our first episode. And what better way to kick it off than to continue with our off-season outlooks. The off-season is now approaching us. Now we have dates as far as when the NBA off-season is going to start. It's going to start November 20th. So things are happening fast, man.
Yeah, bro. Free agency officially starts November 20th. I guess we might as well talk about it right now. They agreed upon the start of the next season, which is going to be December 22. Now we all know the players. So a lot of the players didn't want to, especially the teams that were in the playoffs. Didn't want to start that early.
LeBron was not happy about that.
Yeah, LeBron wasn't happy. But at the same time, other teams had 9 months off. Plus, the playoff teams had what was it, 4 months? 4 months off?
2.5 to 3.
3, around that. And then also, of course, the players do not want to lose out on like $600 million, which they would have lost out if they started a month later.
If you heard us in like the last couple of episodes, we've been kind of talking about the developments of these negotiations, and we kind of together we came to the consensus that starting on December 22nd is the best possible date for everybody involved. Now, sure, does it mean a shortened off season, especially for Miami and the Lakers? Yeah, it does, but it's not just Miami and LA in the NBA.
Hey, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Exactly. So, speaking of the needs of the many, we're going to be talking about, a couple of teams and breaking down their off seasons. These two teams, one of them had, I think, greatly overachieved, at least by our estimation.
Yeah. No. I think we were higher on them than a lot of other people were, but they still overachieved.
No, for sure. They definitely overachieved. And then we have another team that's kind of stagnating a little bit. Like, they have a nice centerpiece to build around, but now they're in that point in time where you have your stud, now you got to build around him to start competing. And the teams we're going to be doing offseason outlooks for are the Miami Heat and the Utah Jazz.
Yeah, so if you didn't already realize it, the team we were talking about overachieving was the Miami Heat. The most, I guess, overachieving team in the NBA.
They made it to the NBA Finals when
they were the 4th seed.
They were a 4 seed. Like, not many 4 seeds make it to the NBA Finals and actually be as competitive as they were with the injuries that they even had against LeBron James.
And especially when we're talking about the offseason part of it, the offseason outlook part, it can be argued there's no other franchise or organization that's in a better spot than Miami is right now. Yeah. In terms of pure just roster construction, moves that they can make. Now, obviously, a team like LA would be in a quote-unquote better spot because you have LeBron and AD. So, it doesn't get much better than that. But in terms of roster flexibility, the moves you can make as an organization,
it's crazy.
Like, Miami is like as I was doing the show notes for this team, man. Yo, Pat Riley, the Godfather, bro. Like, this guy, the way he pulls it off.
Think about like how when LeBron left back in 2014, everyone was like, oh, Miami's gonna go on this crazy tank and rebuild.
Well, I mean, I don't know about tank because they had CB and D Wade.
I mean, but they were aging, so what everyone was thinking, like everyone knew that D Wade was leaving. Everyone knew that Chris Bosh was kind of like his health issues started to become more of a thing, at least in like 2016 or something. So
yeah, I think the first year was still fine. It was when I think the second or third year hit that the whole blood clot issue started coming up.
Yeah. I mean, things weren't looking great in Miami at that point in time, and the fact that Pat Riley never officially tanked.
That's crazy. They were only...
Didn't they make it to the playoffs like almost every year?
Yeah, I think 1 year they might have missed the playoffs.
Oh, it was D-Wade last year. It was D-Wade last year. I remember that now.
And even then, they were still like, we've talked about Miami on, like, by this point, like, an episode basis.
Yeah. That,
like, Miami's, like, the most try-hard team in the league. And literally, even when they were, like, not in a playoff spot, they were, like, one of the toughest teams, especially as, us being a Raptors fans, watching those games every time against Miami. Yo, there's no quitting that team. And that starts out, again, from top down. Pat Riley, But...
And the culture that he instilled.
Yeah,
like,
bro.
The culture is real.
Yeah, the Miami culture is insane, man. They have one of the best cultures in the NBA by far.
No, absolutely.
But speaking in terms of this offseason, you guys know the format of how we're going to do this. Starting out with the notable team free agents. For the Miami Heat, number 1, Goran Dragic, obviously...
He's a big one.
He's a big one, for sure.
He played really well in the playoffs.
And that's, the kind of sad part about it, that, he struggled for this long in his career on winning franchises, but could never, I think, get to that next stage. And he was always one of those winning players. But to be this close and then just not be able to even compete.
Yeah, that injury... Really, like that sucked, man.
Yeah, that the you timing. Feel bad for guys like Goran Dragic, who I think was at this point 34.
He's definitely aged. Like he's definitely like well above 30 at this point, like 32, 33 years old at this point.
Yeah. So like obviously that's their first free agent, and I'll get into it a bit later on too. But he is a very interesting one, I think. Next up, you have Solomon Hill, who they acquired from Memphis at the trade deadline in the Jay Crowder Justice Winslow trade. Again, I think as Raptors fans, he's more notable to us just because he almost single-handedly beat us in the playoffs.
Freaking hell.
Yeah, that's the life of a Raptors fan, almost getting beat by Solomon Hill.
We have a ton of when your franchise has a list of guys who've literally killed you when they shouldn't have.
Gerald Henderson, Etuan Moore.
It's called the Gerald Henderson list.
Yeah. But yeah, Solomon Hill, I guess for us is more notable. But in terms of what he's kind of become at this stage in his career, like Indiana had high hopes for him when they signed him to that big contract. And that never ended up working out. No, wait, it wasn't Indiana, my bad. New Orleans is the one who got him on that big contract. But yeah, at this point in his career, Solomon Hill's pretty much a bench warmer, so I don't know if he's notable or not, but he is another, quote-unquote 3-and-D player. Myers Leonard, who started most of the season for Miami and then obviously didn't play at all in the playoffs, due to obvious reasons.
I think he's gone, though.
Yeah, I don't know if they would re-sign him.
I don't think he wants to come back. I think he's been reported saying that he wants a bigger role. Like he wants to play more.
Yeah, he does, but at the same time, is he going to be able to get a bigger role somewhere else?
I don't know. I feel like Golden State was interested in him. Weirdly enough, I think I read that somewhere.
Yeah, again, but like Myers Leonard, does he really contribute to winning like that, especially if he's playing big minutes? I don't know. But next up on the list, we have Jay Crowder. Again, he was acquired at the trade deadline as part of the Iggy deal. Jay Crowder, Justice Winslow.
I mean, that was the main part of the deal. Like Jay Crowder was that like big piece in that Justice Winslow deal. Sure, Iguodala was there too, but Jay Crowder was that like win now kind of. Hey, he was on a throw in for sure. Like this was a guy like Miami knew what they were getting themselves into.
I'm surprised honestly that Memphis just let him go like that.
Yeah, that's true.
But I guess for their timeline, it does make sense, especially.
But Memphis could have used them
They definitely could have used him, but the thing is, they got a guy that fits more on their timeline.
Yeah.
Plus, Jay Crowder was on an expiring deal, you might as well get something for him then, because I don't think he would come back to Memphis. So I mean, I guess it does make sense from Memphis's point of view.
Yeah, probably not.
But another player we have is Derrick Jones Jr., a guy that pretty much made his career in Miami.
But is he gonna come back though? Because I think he was benched in the playoffs.
He wasn't really benched. It's just his role is pretty limited. But again, Derrick Jones was one of those guys that went from just a guy that dunks and is on the highlight reel to a guy that can contribute valuable minutes. Which even though he didn't play many minutes, watching him throughout the playoffs, he did contribute valuable minutes when he was on the floor. Primarily as that end of the quarter guy Miami could throw in to defend the opposing team's best player, which he did very well.
Yeah, he does have that length and athleticism to, at least keep up. Now, does he have the physical strength? Not really, but
again, that's why Miami would tend to throw him on guards, like whoever the opposing team's best guard was. Miami would throw him on, and he was pretty good considering the fact that again he wasn't playing that many minutes, so he could just go crazy in the minutes that he played.
Yeah.
And then finally we have the Heat lifer, Mr. Heat himself, Udonis Haslem. Unless he retires, he's back for sure. We all know that.
No, he's a Heat lifer, man. I do feel like he might retire though. He's the oldest player in the league now, man. Like at this point, like bro, you gotta call it a career.
I mean, if Pat Riley can convince him maybe that they can get a championship in a year or two, maybe he might just stay on the bench. Because there is people think about it that these veteran guys are pretty much coaches on the bench, which they are. But there's a difference between being an actual coach and just being that player on the end of the bench, that veteran player. There is a world of difference between the two in terms of preparation, what your roles are, what you are in the locker room, how you're looked at, everything. So that's why a lot of guys, for example, don't just become coaches like that. They'd rather just stay as that veteran presence on the team.
I think Gilbert Arenas recently spoke about that. About there's a difference in the way he approaches it. I think it was his interview with John Wall, which actually is a really good interview. You should definitely check that out on Gilbert Arenas' show that he does. But basically, he was saying that NBA players, like former players, have a way of bringing things out of guys, of star players in the league. Because a guy like Udonis Haslem, he's not gonna tell you, "Oh, you're doing great. You're doing great." I don't know who the hell is it gonna be, Jay Crowder or Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero. No, he'll say, "Really? I'll block that. Block that. That's all you got." Like he'll bait you up.
Again, it goes back to the point of how you're viewed and what your role is. Obviously, if a coach did that, unless they're on contending teams, for example, like what Ty Lue kind of was.
That's an HR issue right there. But
again, Ty Lue was the coach of LeBron James. So
but Ty Lue also was a former player.
Exactly. So, in terms of Udonis Haslem, it'll be interesting to see what he does.
Yeah.
And, don't look at the minutes for all the, casual fans out there, bro. You can't look at guys like Udonis Haslem and Jared Dudley and look at their on-court production because their production goes way beyond that. But next up, in terms of Miami's team needs, they are, as of right now, committed to $85 million. But that also includes non-guaranteed contracts. I think
which is crazy considering the cap is 109.
Yeah. In terms of non-guaranteed contracts, I think they have Duncan Robinson and Kendrick Nunn who are on non-guaranteed contracts right now. So that does, they're at $85 million right now. Again, insane. Kelly Olynyk has a player option for $12 million, so that could
probably will take that.
I don't know. I've heard varying reports about what he wants to do with that. But yeah, he does have that player option. They're technically at 81.9 without the non-guaranteed contracts, but obviously, it's gonna be guaranteed because Kendrick Nunn and Duncan Robinson are big parts of those teams. Yeah. And that pretty much means, to sum it up, they're $27 million under the cap right now. $50 million under the tax. So they have a lot of flexibility. They can do a lot of things right now. But
even in a weak free agency,
even in a weak free agency, they have a lot of options. But their main priority as of right now is maintaining their flexibility for the 2021 offseason. Obviously,
#Giannis watch.
Yeah.
That's literally what it is.
That's pretty much what it is. But also, there's a lot of other players in 2021 offseason that they can get and, build around. But yeah, their main priority right now is the 2021 offseason, maintaining their flexibility for that. They are officially committed to $75 million after this season. So pretty
Still really
much,
good.
yeah. So pretty much as of right now, for their next season, or for their next offseason, everyone except for Jimmy Butler is on a team option or they're on the rookie contract, which is insane.
Yeah.
For a team that just went to the finals, bro.
Yeah, I was just about to bring up the fact that, like, something that would eat into that cap space that they're going to have is maybe an extension for Bam Adebayo, but even with that extension, you still have enough to sign a max level player.
But again, you can wait. You can technically wait for that extension.
Yeah, no, you can wait a year or two to give him the extension. You don't have to give it to him right away.
No, but yeah.
What does he have left? Like 2 years?
No, he has this year left, and then they can sign him to the extension. But again, you can wait. Actually, I don't know how the extensions.
You can also you can sign him to an extension now. If he has 1 year left before his qualifying offer.
No. He still has a year. I'm talking about next offseason.
Oh, okay. So he still has this year. Okay, yeah. So you can sign him to the extension next year.
You can sign him to the extension. I don't know if you can wait. You can do it after free agency or not, or after.
There's a deadline to sign.
Yeah, the
players to extension.
Yeah, so
there might
be some issues there, but in terms of still their flexibility that they have, Bam Adebayo, you can still wait until next year to sign him to that extension.
I mean, they can sign 2 max level guys. So if we're talking Bam and somebody else, plus Jimmy's, that includes Jimmy. They have Jimmy's contract on there too. Either way, that's still insane how they can sign all these guys and still maintain like their young players that they already have.
Again, we're talking about a team that just went to finals with this much flexibility, right?
Yeah.
And half your team is like the young guys that are still on the rookie contracts, as I talked about. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But next up, they do have, again, if you want to, you can retain some of your guys from this year on cheaper, flexible contracts. For example, Goran Dragic, Jay Crowder. Obviously, Udonis Haslem will probably sign for a minimum, and he'll get added money somewhere else from Miami. Miami will give him the money under the table or whatever it is. And maybe if you want, you can try re-signing Derrick Jones Jr. It'll be tough, especially if you want to maintain that flexibility for next offseason. But there is potential to at least retain a guy like Goran Dragic. Again, Haslem's definitely back. But Goran Dragic, you have a possibility to be able to retain him. I'm not sure about Jay Crowder and Derrick Jones Jr. I'll get into that a bit later on. But, at least you have the potential to retain, one of your key guys in Goran Dragic. But, yeah, in terms of that was their veterans that they could extend. And then for their actual team as of right now, just continue your roster development of the young guys, especially Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Kendrick Nunn. They just went to finals this year, so like you're pretty set. Not to mention the way they played. Even Kendrick Nunn, who struggled after the break, but he came back in the finals and actually looked pretty decent. Yeah. I think it was the whole thing about him trying to get his rhythm back from the whole Corona, because obviously he had Corona, so then that obviously takes a lot out of you.
I mean, and also because like Eric Spoelstra kind of lost a bit of faith in him, and then
he was kind of trash. Yeah. If we're being honest, he was kind of trash towards the end of the season. But by the time the finals rolled around, I think also the environment might have helped him out too. Just like straight basketball, nothing else.
Yeah.
So just continue your roster development, especially of the young guys. And then finally, in terms of if you want to make some additions right now, you could get some defensive guards to help you out. Obviously, we know the defensive limitations of guys like Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Goran Dragic, Kendrick Nunn. So in terms of, Miami's always going to be a good team, a defensive team, just because of how they play. But we saw in the playoffs that teams tried to expose them. The Lakers were the only ones to, I think, successfully do it on a nightly basis. But even then, the Lakers struggled just because of how good of a coach Eric Spoelstra is. But again, you do want another guy to maybe shore up that side of the defense. Another need you could possibly fill is a power forward. Again, they're running Myers Leonard this year at like the power forward spot. for most of the season, and then in the playoffs, Jay Crowder. So, you could use another power forward, especially a stretch four, kind of. And then finally, another, some backup bigs. Obviously, we just talked about Myers Leonard. He might be gone. Kelly Olynyk, possibly. You could possibly also end up trading him. So their backup big man depth is quite murky. And we saw even in the finals that without Bam Adebayo, they suffered a significant drop off, especially in the forward/center spots.
Yeah, no, that was very apparent. I mean, yeah, what you said is exactly what they need, man. Like they need to just add on to what they already have, while still like they can still have that little 1 year window to compete. Maybe try to run it back with another chance at the finals, or they could potentially, wait, chill on their salary, and sign Giannis.
Again, knowing Pat Riley, he'll do a bit of both, right?
Yeah,
he'll try to get the most he can out of this season. But obviously, we know Miami's most likely not going to win the championship this season. You might as well remain competitive while you're at it. And, of course, Pat Riley will never tank.
I mean, crazier things have happened. I mean, Pat Riley could... Again, no one expected their team to be in the NBA Finals, and they were there.
But again, it comes down to the fact that even with a bad roster, they'll still be pretty decent. Just because of their culture.
But the East will definitely be better than it was last year.
But again, it comes down to Giannis watch, pretty much, 2021 offseason.
Yeah.
In terms of their draft, they do have the 20th pick this season. And there's a couple of names out there. One being Desmond Bane, shooting guard from TCU. He's a bit of more older. He's, I think, 22 right now. He's a bit older. He's more of a polished guard on both sides of the ball. Can play some defense. Versatile on offense. So in terms of backup guards, that might be, one option. Another option that's being talked about, even though this might be a bit of a high pick for who he is, but, in terms of what they need right now, they could use a stretch four who can also rebound as well. And that would take us to Zeke Naji from Arizona. Again, we're not the biggest college guys, but in terms of having a power forward that can, stretch the floor next to Bam Adebayo and who can also rebound, that would definitely be a great boost to Miami, considering, their kind of weak big man depth as of right now.
I also wouldn't be surprised if Miami traded this pick either. Just based on the fact that like they're in that kind of that win now mode, and they're kind of like Toronto in the sense that most of their gems come undrafted.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Even their drafts, like Pat Riley has done an exceptional job drafting players.
And at this point in this year's draft, everyone's kind of looking to trade their draft picks.
Yeah,
which poses a problem because if every single team is looking to trade their draft picks, nobody's gonna trade for them.
Yeah, that's all. That's a whole other thing. The draft is definitely gonna be interesting this year, man.
It'll be as you said, it'll be an interesting draft for sure, I think.
Yeah.
But going into some free agents / trades they could make. Number one, again, as I was talking about, they could just try to re-sign their guys that they have right now in terms of Goran Dragic, Jay Crowder, and Derrick Jones Jr. Now, will they be able to re-sign all of them, or would they choose to re-sign all of them? I don't know. Derrick Jones, could you get him on a small contract? Maybe. Maybe another team sees potential in him and just throws like a mid-size offer at him. I don't think that will happen, but...
I mean, I can see it happening. I could see it, like, if he wants to chase after a bit more money, he can definitely go do it, and I think Pat Riley would definitely tell him to go do it.
Again, Miami's talked about re-signing Goran Dragic, so I think the issue will just be the number that they agree on, but Goran Dragic will, I think, most likely be back. The interesting one is Jay Crowder. Obviously, he's going to be very, I think, sought after.
Oh, yeah.
Though, again, his production does not, I think, match up to his value. And we've seen that over the past couple of years.
Style and what he could potentially bring to your organization. I think that's what people are
It's the role that he plays, pretty much, is what is valuable.
It's such a highly touted role.
The 3-and-D role.
And he plays it decently well to the point where...
Sometimes good. A lot of times not so great.
A ton of upside. Like when he's on, he can be great. I think early on in Miami's playoff run, he had like a game where he exploded.
Well, early on in Miami's playoff run, he was probably their second, third best player.
So, I mean, again, within a playoff run,
he was single-handedly keeping them their offense afloat sometimes.
I mean, even within a playoff run, you want multiple guys to step up for you.
Again, for Jay Crowder, you can see the upside of him in terms of what he brought to Miami's beginning of the playoffs.
Yeah.
But then you could also see
the downside.
The downside of what he did when he went to Cleveland.
Oh my
next
god!
To LeBron.
Wait, he went to Cleveland?
You don't remember that when he was there for half a season?
Oh no, I know. I just really tried hard to forget about it.
That team was a mess, man. That team was definitely.
Remember when Isaiah Thomas was on that team?
Yeah, bro, that was the same season.
Derrick Rose.
That was the same season. God. The next free agent potentially is Danilo Gallinari. Now he was pretty much a Miami Heat at this point at the trade deadline this past season. Yeah. He was a Heat player. But the problem was he won an extension, and him and Miami just couldn't agree on a number, so that's why the trade ended up falling through. But at this past season, he was pretty much a Miami Heat player.
Yeah.
Which means likely Pat Riley will try to go after him. The only way this works, especially if they re-sign Goran Dragic, is they would have to get Kelly Olynyk to pick up his option and then try to get rid of him. Because of the fact that, contractual issues with Kelly Olynyk's player option. But the only way it would work pretty much is Kelly Olynyk picks up his option for $12 million and Miami trades him. I don't think that would be too hard, but knowing Pat Riley, I think he could pull it off, getting Danilo Gallinari. But again, Gallo's talked about how he wants to win, but he also kind of wants like a decent contract at least. Mm-hmm. Especially given what he did this year in OKC.
He played really well. And if he can maintain that level of health, we talked about this in the OKC offseason outlook. Definitely check that out if you haven't done so already. But he's in a position now where if he can maintain that level of health and still give you that level of production, pretty valuable piece. Like, pretty valuable player.
Yeah. And then next up we have another forward, Marcus Morris. It remains to be seen what he does, but he's also
He needs a bounce back for sure.
He needs a bounce back. But then finally, we have a few guards, as I was talking about, defensive-minded guards who can, do something on offense as well. Shoot. Tony Snell, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Wesley Matthews, Garrett Temple. All kind of the same mold of players. Again, differences between all four of them, but they all serve essentially around the same kind of capacity in the NBA role. So those are a couple of guys you can go after. And finally, we have like one interesting trade I was thinking about. I don't know if it's likely and how exactly if the details would match up and work. But Drew Holiday would definitely be a great fit in Miami. Not to mention the fact that if Miami was able to get Drew Holiday, that would be pretty crazy. You would need picks. You would need Kelly Olynyk's contract, and you would need probably Goran Dragic's
Doesn't Miami
contract.
not have any picks?
No, they do. They have a few picks.
Okay, so they didn't trade them all away.
No, they didn't. But again, you would kind of need you would need a lot of moving parts for this to work. So I don't know how likely it is.
Yeah, and also if David Griffin would be even willing to do it.
Yeah, but it would be pretty crazy if he was able to get to a team like Miami because then at that point they could be a potential, probably the favorite to make out the East.
I mean, at that point, it's like, look how good you are on both ends of the floor. You have Jimmy Butler, Drew Holiday, Bam Adebayo, and potentially you still have room to sign a guy like Giannis. Now, although Giannis is basically coming to Toronto because the plan's already in motion, but
hopefully, man.
Hopefully, I mean, like again, plan's still in motion, but no, it would be insane if Drew Holiday ends up in Miami, and I think it definitely is possible. Just again, what you were mentioning, the likelihood, how likely of it is with all these moving parts fit. That's to be seen, man.
Again, there is a downside with the flexibility that Miami has in terms of how many different things can happen. But again, it comes with the advantages and disadvantages, pros and cons, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So that was the offseason outlook for the Miami Heat. Definitely a team with a lot of options. Now we move into a team in the Utah Jazz that had a pretty, how do I say that? I guess a very tumultuous season.
That's pretty much how to accurately describe the Utah Jazz of the past 5 years.
Because
up and down.
It's been literally up and down. Like I think they started the season off good, then they would drop, then they were good again, and then right before the bubble, the whole Rudy Gobert shit, they were down. And then during the bubble, they started playing better.
Pretty much, they always start off terrible. I don't know. I think they start off better this season. I might be wrong. But they pretty much always start off terrible because their schedules are always completely like messed up in terms of they have like a bunch of hard teams in the beginning, and then their schedule just gets very soft after the All-Star break.
Yeah, like it's really weird how Utah, fluctuates, and most of it actually happens to do with how their defense plays. Now Utah's been a very defensive-minded team for the last few seasons. I mean, because literally the only offensive piece has been Donovan Mitchell. And we'll get to Donovan Mitchell in a second. But when you think about where they struggle, when the Jazz struggle, it's usually when their defense fluctuates. And a lot of that has to do on Rudy Gobert. When he starts to falter in his play, the team suffers because of it. And I don't know if there's necessarily a fix to that. Like, I'll get into a bit more on what I think they should do with Rudy Gobert, because after this season, he will need a new contract as well. But yeah, Utah's just in such a weird position. And
I think, interestingly enough, we talk about their defense being amazing and their offense being bad. But this year was more of the opposite, I think.
I looked it up. They had the 10th best. They were 10th in offensive rating, 13th in defensive rating.
So they pretty much kind of swapped their identities. And again, that comes with the territory of acquiring a guy like Mike Conley, who, although he wasn't like great, no, that's an understatement. He was bad.
He was really bad.
He was bad until, the bubble, where you finally kind of start to figure it out. But again, he is that kind of player that will at least theoretically boost your offense. But I think the main thing it had to do was Donovan Mitchell taking that next step. Rudy Gobert, I think, was offensively better this year too. But also the big one, Bojan Bogdanovic, who they signed last summer.
Bojan Bogdanovic was huge for them this season, just giving them that boost offensively. It sucks that he got hurt and wasn't able to be there for them in the bubble and the playoff run. But speaking of that playoff run, you touched upon it with Donovan Mitchell. This guy took the next level in the sense that he was absolutely phenomenal in that series against Denver. Like, I was watching this while I was at work, and it was a very entertaining series. Watching him and Jamal Murray. That was one of the
best series I've definitely watched.
Going back and forth, man. He has arrived. They've already agreed upon an extension, which is also something the Jazz need to pay attention to moving forward. I think it's a 5-year, $155 million extension. That's gonna
definitely well deserved.
Definitely well deserved. I mean, you found your guy, but now they need to figure out how do you build around him, because one of the issues with their offense and the reason why they got guys like Bojan Bogdanovic and Mike Conley was because besides Donovan Mitchell, they didn't really have anyone else doing anything.
Yeah, Donovan Mitchell and Joe Ingles were kind of carrying their offense for the past couple of years.
Yeah, but I mean, like what could you really do? The Jazz tried to bring in Mike Conley to spark something, and it didn't really work. Which, speaking of some of the notable free agents this offseason, with a lot of questions already, the first one is Jordan Clarkson. Now, Jordan Clarkson was another guy who they brought in to fix their offensive issues. They're struggling.
And he definitely helped.
Oh, he did. After rotting away in Cleveland, this guy finally got out of Cleveland and, became a spark for them off the bench. Now, I don't know what's with the cornrows and everything like that. I don't know what Jordan Clarkson was trying to do.
Yo, this guy got his VC maxed out, bro.
Pretty much, yeah.
Guy got all the tattoos and everything.
Bro, but okay, either way, he played really well. He was a good spark off the bench. He shot the ball exceptionally well.
Well, speaking of him shooting well, that's, I think, the main thing that made him take a huge leap forward. He was one of those guys that was notoriously, inefficient, a shot chucker, and that didn't shoot threes that great. But now, this season especially, he established himself as a guy that can shoot threes. Similar to, I think, the TJ Warren thing. Two guys that are scorers but didn't shoot threes, and that was the main thing holding them back. But this season, they flipped the script, and they randomly became good shooters. And you saw how well both of those guys played.
Yeah. Like, if I'm the Jazz, I would definitely look to bring him back. But it just depends on how much he's going to cost. Because now, after having such a good bounce-back season, he's going to command a decent amount of money. And the Jazz don't really have a ton of cap space, at least this season. The second notable free agent is Ed Davis. Now, Ed Davis was one of the few veterans that they signed on one-year deals just to see how they would fit. Now, Ed Davis, he's not the greatest anymore, but I think he's still a solid enough vet that I think he's worth bringing back.
The thing about Ed Davis, again, he was kind of injured the season, so take it for what you will. His previous season was very productive, but again, this season it wasn't the greatest tale of what he can provide. Yeah. But I think the Utah Jazz would definitely be interested in maybe bringing him back.
Yeah, and finally, the last notable free agent is Emmanuel Mudiay. Mudiay was, again, among the veterans that they brought in to bolster their roster. Again, I'm not too sure if they're going to bring Mudiay back, but, as far as a depth piece, I think he was solid for
him deal. Personally, I think he definitely improved. He definitely looked a lot better this year than I've seen him look in previous years.
Yeah, no, for sure. But again, can Utah bring him back or should they? That's a whole other conversation. Which brings us into what Utah actually needs as a team. And we gotta start off the bat. The first thing they need another creator next to Donovan Mitchell, which they thought they were getting in Mike Conley, but that clearly did not work.
Well, based on how Mike Conley played in the bubble, there is still some hope that he can provide that.
Okay.
And you also have another guy in Joe Ingles who's kind of being that secondary creator for them. But in terms of, what you're saying, Mike Conley was kind of brought there to become that secondary creator, the point guard for them. And it didn't really work. Again, we'll see what happens next year.
I think they definitely need another star player. They need another star next to Donovan Mitchell if they're looking to move, go deep into a playoff run. Ideally, you'd want someone either on a point guard position or the power forward position because, Mitchell already plays the 2 guard. You have Bojan Bogdanovic locked in, so you want 2 players to kind of fill out the rest of the starting.
Especially a stretch 4 next to Gobert.
Yeah, stretch 4. That's if you keep Gobert long term, and that's a whole other conversation. The next thing they're definitely gonna look to acquire this offseason is they need some depth, especially at the point guard and at the center position. Preferably ones that can shoot, because spacing has just been a huge issue in Utah. They just can't seem to find players that can shoot.
Well, that's why they've had pretty much Royce O'Neal playing their power forward.
Yeah.
Which Royce O'Neal can do, but again, he is 6'5",
undersized.
So ideally it's not what you want to do, but it has worked for them to some degree.
Yeah. I mean, again, they need to show up their depth, especially for playoff runs. I think, who is the backup point guard with Emmanuel Mudiay? Again, solid, but I think you can do better than that. You do have Joe Ingles, who is fantastic.
Not to mention your backup center is Tony Bradley. I like Tony Bradley, but in terms of his production,
you need someone better.
Yeah,
man.
you kind of need someone better. That's what Ed Davis was there for, but again, he was injured. So you have options that you could possibly go to.
The Jazz have some nice pieces. I like Royce O'Neal. I like Joe Ingles a lot, but I think they need some extra pieces to put in place to make this a true, playoff contender. The next thing they need to look into is possibly clearing out some of the bad contracts. Specifically, I was referring to the Gobert contract and the Mike Conley contract. Now, this is referring to the fact that Donovan Mitchell's extension is going to kick in either next year or the year after, one of those 2 years. Until it's signed, we won't actually know officially when it's going to kick in.
I mean, if he has still one more year, it would kick in.
He has this next season, of course, and then he's on the qualifying offer. So I think it starts from next year. But either way, that's going to be a lump sum of money that the Jazz are going to have to work around. And the fact is that you cannot afford to pay a guy like Gobert the $26 million that he's making now. Mike Conley's for sure not getting $35 million.
Well, the interesting thing about Gobert is his Supermax issue, right?
He's eligible for the Supermax.
Yeah, so he's definitely going to try to get it. Obviously, no one's going to give him a Supermax. I mean, Utah's not going to give him a Supermax. But in terms of his $26 million a season, I guess for what he doesn't provide on the offensive end, you can say it's a bad contract. But in terms of what he is defensively, Utah would be nowhere near where they are right now without Rudy Gobert's defensive prowess.
Rudy Gobert is arguably the best defensive big in this league. One of the best defensive players in this league, period. The problem with Gobert, there's 2 issues for me. Number 1 is inconsistency. When he's playing well, he's fantastic as a rim protector. Even offensively, he's gotten better, as you mentioned earlier. He's got better on the offensive end. But the problem is that when he is not on, he's just bad, and that his He has a lot of mood swings. Like,
I was just gonna talk
pretty
about.
moody
I was just gonna say that. He does. He has had a couple of like issues in the locker room and chemistry wise, and obviously, if we're talking about the whole shutdown, we know what happened preceding the shutdown. Again, we're not gonna talk about it because we're not gonna talk about it because there's no point.
We roasted him enough.
There's no point of reflecting on a guy's mistakes, when he apologized for it. But
even though they were very glaring,
things of that nature, he's kind of had a reputation for.
Yeah.
Which is why there has been reports of people not liking him in the locker room. So there is those issues that you gotta deal with. But again, I'm not on the team, so I can't speak on it.
Yeah. Again, like that's his inconsistency is the one thing I don't like, and then I can't see him as a max level guy. I can't see him as a super max level player because of the fact
definitely not super max.
He's very, for the most part, one dimensional. Like, sure, you can argue that he's made strides on the offensive end, but you can't give him the ball in the low post and expect him to post up or be able to, consistently finish and be a reliable scoring option.
Again, that's the one thing that's held him back.
Literally, it's the one thing. If he can work on that, he'd be a fantastic big in today's game. Be a great help to Donovan Mitchell. But that's my issue with him. And would I rather pay this guy $26 million or would I rather trade him for assets while he still has value and then potentially sign a better fitting center in free agency? Same thing goes with Mike Conley. Mike Conley has 1 year left. I don't think he's sticking around long term in Utah unless he has a huge bounce back season, but I don't think that's likely. So maybe try to recoup some assets for Mike Conley. I would salary dump him to maybe a bad team.
Again, he has he's on a $34 million deal?
But it's 1 year, it's expiring. So
the issue is with that is even though it is expiring, you'd need to find a way to make the salaries work.
That's the issue.
And that is the big problem.
But I think it's definitely doable. Especially, with the fact that the Utah Jazz do have a first round pick in this year's draft that somebody might be willing to trade for, and they also have a 2021 second from the Golden State Warriors for next year as well. So they have some picks that they can move around and make some of these salary dumps worthwhile. So finally, the last thing, and I think this is already a given, the last thing that the Jazz need to do is build around Donovan Mitchell. You need to, every move, every player acquisition you get now is going to be centered around, does this guy fit with Donovan Mitchell? Does he fit next to Mitchell? If not, then he shouldn't be a member of your team.
In terms of the Utah Jazz, though, I think I want to bring this up quickly. The Utah Jazz, if we're talking about moves that they can make, are notoriously a more conservative franchise in terms of similar to what I think if we're transcending sports, I think that the Green Bay Packers are.
Yeah, a very small market franchise, a franchise that doesn't really like to go for it all the time. Content with just consistent winning.
Yeah, they're not gonna go crazy,
but never get to star player help. That's actually a really good analogy. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, kind of. But again, as I was talking about, they're more of the conservative kind of front office. They that's how they employ. That's how they work. So I think that could change because I think don't they have a situation with ownership where they're trying to sell the team?
I think they already sold it.
Oh, did they?
I think they sold it already to someone. I forgot the name.
Oh no, I think that was the past season, right? They sold it.
They sold it recently.
I don't know, but
Jazz ownership. Yeah, Jazz ownership.
I think last offseason was when I saw them probably be the most aggressive I've seen them in a while.
Yeah.
Getting Bogdanovich and Clarkson and Mike Conley.
They made a lot of signings.
That was I think the most aggressive I've seen from them in the past I don't know how long. So, maybe that's their new norm, but it is something to be worth mentioning, in terms of franchise values and their cultures.
Yeah, so Utah did actually sell the team to a Utah tech entrepreneur, Ryan Smith. So
1.6
bill. So yeah, Jazz have been sold. So they might change the ways at the front office. Who knows? Which brings us into the draft for the Utah Jazz. Now they do have one first round pick in this year's draft, the 23rd pick. Personally, you all know at this point what my policy is. If you're a contending team, I would trade the pick.
I mean, they're not really a contending team, but
well, if you're a team that can potentially focusing on winning, I'd trade the pick for assets. That's just me.
But again, as I talked about, every team's gonna trade,
which is exactly so. if they are going to draft some players, a few options would be Vernon Carey. He is a player that is out of Duke. Power forward, someone who can definitely score and play some solid defense. He has a lot of tools. He's compared to a lot to Domantas Sabonis, which doesn't really make a ton of sense if you look at his defensive numbers. But I think as a guy who can solidly score the basketball, has good enough mechanics that you can work on an NBA jumpers. He's someone you can definitely build with for the future. So someone you need to develop as well. And another player who you would really need to develop is, Jaden McDaniels. He is a raw prospect, solid foundations. His comparison was actually to Jonathan Isaac. And if you develop him, he has the length, he has the height, athleticism. If you can develop him into a two-way stud, he can be something special for you.
Again, just to make it clear, we're not the biggest college guys.
No,
you can probably tell that in terms of how we talk about the NBA versus how we talk about the college scene. We'll leave that to more of, the college guys.
Experts can kind of deal with that more so than what we can. But as far as what I can see, these are a couple of names that I think the Jazz could maybe look into. Which brings us finally into free agency. Now, I'm not going to lie, there wasn't a ton of things I could do, at least for this offseason. The Jazz don't have a ton of money to play with. I think if I'm not mistaken, they have... so they're already $5 million over the cap this year, and they are 14 million under the tax. So they definitely have some space to work with, at least under the tax, if they're willing to pay that amount.
But again, knowing the Jazz, them going to luxury tax, especially for a team that's not really a contender.
Yeah. But, I mean, obviously the first thing I think we've already mentioned to do this is to re-sign Jordan Clarkson and maybe Ed Davis. I think Clarkson is definitely a player that worked really well in Utah's system. Now, it depends on how much he's going to command, but I hope they can get him reasonably within the $10 to $15 million range per year. I think that's...
Maybe like 12, 13.
Yeah, I just think it's a decent enough range for a player who comes off the bench and gives that level of production that he provided them. Ed Davis, you can obviously sign him to the league minimum, and I think he'd take it personally. So, good depth. Another player, we mentioned this player a lot, but, he's just that guy that you can potentially get on basically any team. It's Bismack Biyombo. We mentioned that the Jazz have a really weak at their center position. Like, behind Rudy Gobert, they really don't really have anybody else. And I think Biyombo can come in. Again, he doesn't boost your offense, but what he does do is he gives you that solid defensive presence, good rebounders, someone who can really clean up the glass if Donovan Mitchell misses a shot or two.
Again, the Biyombo thing would probably happen if Ed Davis was gone. Because if you can get access to Ed Davis re-signing, that's probably the option you take.
Yeah, it really depends. But yeah, as a depth piece, I would sign Bismack Biyombo. Another guy who we brought up in multiple...
Bro, there's like the running joke that he's pretty much been in all our offseason now.
I think we just want to see him in a better situation. It's Langston Galloway. I just think, again, he's just that type of player who can give you an offensive spark off the bench. Hopefully on a team that's on a playoff team,
and on a contract that won't be too much.
Exactly.
He's a reasonable role player that can play some decent enough minutes for you and give you, again, shooting, which is what every team wants at this point in the NBA.
Yeah, again,
does that make him a fit to go to every team? I don't know. That's kind of what we've been working with. But yeah,
it's definitely something interesting to think about. And obviously, I do think he'd be a beneficial player. Another, obviously, something I was looking into before the Trade Machine website didn't really stop working for a little bit. I was looking for trade options for potentially moving on from Mike Conley or Rudy Gobert. The problem I kept running into was, how do you get salaries to match? I just thought of one. Now, I don't know if they'll do it, but if Drew Holiday can be sent to Utah in exchange for Mike Conley and multiple first-round picks, I don't know.
Well, how would the money wouldn't even work, though?
No, it'd work. You can, or, unless you want to trade Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, but there's a $9 million difference on the money.
You can make the money work. I think this is a lot easier to do than what I was doing with the Knicks and what I was doing with, you can make the money work. I think, especially if you throw in multiple first-round picks into this mix. But that would mean that Utah would have to say, hey, we're going for this right away. So just a thought. Don't know. I don't think it's gonna happen, but who knows? If Drew Holiday ends up on Utah, you'll know where you heard it first. And basically, that was it. That's the offseason outlook with Utah Jazz. A lot of questions, but at least for them, they have their guy. They have their guy for the future. They have their centerpiece in Donovan Mitchell. Now it's just about building outwards and seeing what you can do around a player of that caliber. Yeah. So let us know what you guys think on our offseason outlooks of the Miami Heat and the Utah Jazz. Do you guys agree or disagree? Do you have any thoughts on how you would improve these teams? Let us know on social media or the comment section on YouTube. Which moves us into the up and under segment for this week. First off, a little bit of somber news. Are you up or under on Celtics legend Tommy Heinsohn passes away at the age of 86? Obviously, it's sad that he passed away. It's just, I don't know what else more to say. I mean, we personally didn't know a lot about him.
Listen, Tommy Heinsohn was, I don't know if you did, but I don't know. I guess I'd be more familiar with Tommy Heinsohn maybe than you. But, again, tuning into NBC Boston, he was, as a Raptors fan, I kind of, as a Raptors fan, hate. Actually, every other team probably hated hearing Tommy Heinsohn on, on the broadcast, just because he was so pro Boston that it wasn't even funny. But again, that's why he meant so much to Boston and Celtics fans, and what he represented for the whole Massachusetts area in terms of where he came from as a player in an era like the 60s, playing next to players like Bill Russell, Sam Jones, Casey Jones. In the time that they did, to be, standing next to those guys and the role that he played, especially in 11 titles, along with everything, all the issues that came off the court with that. You got to respect how he stood during that time. And then you got to respect his work afterwards. Obviously, he's always been around the organization afterwards. And, as I talked about, he's arguably, the face of the Boston Celtics off the court, right? So that's why Celtics fans in Boston, people loved him so much. And he was definitely one of the pioneers of the NBA and definitely a legend, especially for the Celtics. So, definitely rest in peace to him. Yeah. Thoughts and prayers for his family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Next up, as we talked about, I think before, are you up or under on the season officially beginning December 22nd and free agency starting November 20th?
So I'm up on the fact that the season's starting on December 22nd. I think that's the right decision for the league. I'm just a little under on the fact that the free agency has to wait till November 20th, because that means that there's only a week and a half maybe until...
This might be the craziest free agency, not in terms of moves, but just in terms of the scale of
the moratorium period's only 2 days. You can't have that thing what we had last year with Kawhi Leonard taking 5 or 6 straight days, not making a decision, and everyone waiting on this man.
Yeah.
You can't have that. And plus, also, training camp starts on December 1st. So...
Again, this was all done also in terms of to avoid the time conflict with the Olympics. So we're talking about the quickest turnaround in history.
These next few weeks in the NBA is actually going to be absolutely insane. So, yeah, I'm up on the start date. I'm just a little under on the fact that teams are going to have free agency and literally they're not even going to have any time to rest. They're just going to get acclimated. It's just right in the training camp. So we'll see what happens. Moving on, are you up or under on Russell Westbrook officially wanting a trade from Houston? After James Harden is reportedly committed to staying in Houston, and both, Russell Westbrook kind of didn't, had expressed concern over the direction of the team. So are you up or under on Westbrook wanting a trade, and what Houston will do moving forward?
This is kind of tough because
it's a double-edged sword for sure.
I think that's a good point. It's a double-edged sword. I mean, I guess I'm up on it because of the fact that, first of all, though I have all of my criticism of Russell Westbrook, At the end of the day, I do want a guy like that who has that much passion for the game to be able to succeed and win at the highest level.
Yeah.
So I do want him to win. And clearly it's probably not going to happen in Houston.
No.
Not to mention the fact that Houston is officially has no options like at all to do anything. Like they can't do anything. The only way, again, I think we talked about this last episode.
Yeah.
I think it might be last episode. The only way that they can do anything is pretty much if they're able to get off of Russell Westbrook's contract. Again, the problem is who's going to be willing to take Russell Westbrook's contract.
Yeah, that's the mystery that nobody I think can solve, man. Like, I'm sorry, it's just like that's a $44 million it's a $40 million contract.
We were talking about Daryl Morey last episode, pretty much how he low-key kind of screwed the team over at the end and just dipped. So
yeah,
again, that's kind of funny, but Houston fans like
how much you want to New York? New York.
I would not be surprised. I would not be
New
surprised.
New York will do it.
I would not be surprised, bro. They trade like RJ Barrett.
It already sounds just
RJ Barrett
Bobby
and like
Portis,
everyone. Well, I think Bobby Portis is a free agent.
Oh yeah, RJ Barrett, Julius Randle.
Like all the players they can trade to get.
Russell.
Well, here's the thing: they do have Leon Rose now. At the very least, I trust him more than like what they had
you still
before.
have James Dolan, so
yeah, that's the issue, right? And so it'll be definitely interesting what happens with them. Next up, are you up or under on Fred VanVleet, incumbent free agent, talking about how it's no secret that he wants to get paid in free agency?
I'm a little under on it from the perspective of the Raptor fan. I want to keep him like very, very badly. Like I do want to keep him. The problem is, how is the Raptors going to make the money work?
I mean, they can make the money work. The issue is, well, how would they make the money work if they try to sign Giannis afterwards?
Well, that's the major concern, is that everything is reliant upon 2021. And also, it's like, if we give all the money to Fred, we can't bring back Serge, and that, like,
Again, if you listen to his podcast
crazy.
with JJ Redick, it wasn't that he was, like, saying that he wanted to leave Toronto. He was kind of, going both ways. But, again, it's no secret that he wants to get paid. And rightfully so, he deserves it.
Yeah, no, I think
it comes with the territory.
Yeah, it's tough, man. As a fan, I don't want to see a player like that go, but at the same time, I want him to get paid. It's such a crazy situation. Moving on, are you up or under on the Atlanta Hawks reportedly interested in Drew Holiday and would actually package their number 6 overall pick to do so?
I'm up on it. I think I would definitely... I was thinking about this in my head like a couple of days ago, that Drew Holiday, I think, would be a great fit in Atlanta. You have him next to a guy, and obviously we know Trae Young's deficiencies on the defensive end. Have a guy like Drew Holiday who can play the combo guard. He would be great for them. Not to mention, obviously this year's draft isn't worth that much.
Yeah.
So, like, if they're able to package a pick like that, it would be impressive, I think, to have Drew Holiday on a team like Atlanta. It'll definitely be great for them.
Yeah. Moving on, are you up or under on the Phoenix Suns reportedly interested in the Chris Paul sweepstakes?
Again, I'm up on that. Because
really?
of the fact, yeah, I am. I guess maybe not so much for Chris Paul, but at this stage, the next 2 years he's gonna have to play it out, whatever he does, unless he just wants to decline his next year, which is he'd be again crazy.
The $47 million option.
That's not gonna happen. So, I mean, in terms of the fact that you're kind of... OKC was a very feel-good story this year, but I don't know how much room they have to get any better. Phoenix, on the other hand, had a good end of the season, not to mention the fact that you can see their potential in what they can be as a team.
Yeah.
So, like, if you add a guy like Chris Paul to Devin Booker, Kelly Oubre, Mikal Bridges, that's the problem, right? How would the money work?
Like, the most valuable contract is Devin Booker, and I don't think you're trading Devin Booker for Chris Paul.
That's not
Makes
happening.
no sense.
But again, and that's a big if you were able to make the money work, then I think that would be a very fun situation, to say the least, I think.
Definitely would be interesting for sure.
Next up, are you up or under on... Actually, this was announced today, too. Are you up or under on the OKC Thunder promoting their assistant, Mark... I don't know how to pronounce it, but Mark Daynault to head coach. He's going to be their new head coach to replace Billy Donovan. He was also a head coach for them in their G League affiliate. So for what that's worth, he does have a developmental background.
I'm up on it. I mean, based on the direction the Thunder are looking to take, they're trying to go for the rebuild. And I think they're kind of trying to mimic what the Raptors kind of did with Nick Nurse, bring up the assistant coach.
Yeah.
And hopefully he's some creative genius. I'm up on it. At the end of the day, I don't know.
He is 35, so that makes him one of the youngest coaches.
I think Ryan Saunders is the other young one.
Yeah. I think he might be the second youngest after Ryan Saunders.
But no, I think for sure it's an interesting direction. I like the fact that they didn't just go for the splashy name or some old veteran out of the cupboard or something. So I like it. It's something new. It's something different. Hopefully it works out for them. But as far as their direction, it makes complete sense why they would do this. And finally, are you up or under on John Wall saying that players are too friendly in today's game? He said this while on Gilbert Arenas' new show. Definitely should watch the interview. I really did like that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good interview. I mean, I'm up on the sense that I guess we all kind of agree with John Wall on this.
Oh, no, for sure we agree with John Wall.
But the issue is, I think, what the connotations of it are in terms of, how the old era is perceived, even though, again, they were hanging out with each other and whatnot. And the interesting thing is that John Wall said it, considering, can I have your shoes, Kyrie, and whatnot. Funny situation. But I guess, yeah, it is kind of true, though.
It is. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the new league now, I guess. But we're old school. We think that it should be all competition, But yeah, with that concludes this week's episode. We hope you guys enjoyed it. We hope you guys enjoyed the new video format. Definitely subscribe to the show and all the various podcasting platforms. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, basically wherever you can find a podcast. And now you can find us on YouTube. You can find us with the Up and Under Podcast. Also, check out our social media, Twitter and Instagram at up_N_podcast, Facebook.com/up_and_podcast for all the latest updates whenever we post a new episode, our reaction to news when they occur. Also, check out our website, upandunderpodcast.com. It's our central hub for the show. It's also a place where we write blog posts about every single episode, so if you don't have time to listen to the full thing, you can read about it. So definitely check it out if you haven't done so. And finally, our off-season coverage is going to continue. Things are just going to get crazier from here on out.
Things are about to get crazy.
Things are about to be insane. So with that concludes this week's episode, and we will see you guys all in the next one. Take it easy.
Easy.